So as the National Guard is getting deployed, now in advance of protests even occurring, like in San Antonio, a lot of you might be thinking about or wondering about or wishing that you paid more attention in history class about the Kent State shootings, right? Because this is probably the most dramatic example of the National Guard being deployed against citizens who are protesting, and of course, had terrible results. So just so that we're all on the same page, here's kind of the basic timeline. So in 1970, at the end of April, President Nixon announces his Cambodian incursion. He basically says, we're going to ramp up our actions in Cambodia. Keep in mind, the U.S. was getting more involved in Cambodia because it was the neighbor to Vietnam, and it was one of the areas where the North Vietnamese were able to kind of use these trails, nicknamed the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It wasn't just one, but different trails through the jungles that went out into Cambodia and then down into the south to fight the U.S. troops. This was an incredibly controversial escalation of an already controversial war, and a lot of students go out to protest. So from what I can tell from my research, during the day, the student protests were overwhelmingly peaceful. At night, sometimes there were altercations happening. Of course, you have people coming from all over the area to come and participate in these protests, and not all of them were students. You have some different altercations at bars that causes, I think, the mayor to shut down all the bars early, that sort of thing. Eventually, city officials and local businesses are receiving threats about destruction to different buildings that are going to occur that night. Now, there's also all these other threats that prove to be unfounded, but it is true that the National Guard is called in advance of these rumors of destruction. And when they arrive, the ROTC building on campus is already on fire. By Monday, May 4th, the actual official student protest is finally going to occur, like it was supposed to kind of occur a few days earlier, and around 2,000 people gather, mostly students, but not all university students. Members of the Ohio National Guard are there. They are on kind of like one side of the protest. They get hold of a bullhorn, which I guess they didn't have before, and they announce orders to disperse. The crowd doesn't really hear that. Eventually, they also release some tear gas, so things start to escalate, right? A lot of the students then start turning around and kind of throwing rocks and that sort of thing at the National Guard. Eventually, when they can't get the crowd to disperse, they start actually kind of like marching toward the crowd. Students are fleeing as the National Guard is marching. I mean, their guns are locked and loaded with bayonets fixed, right? And so students are fleeing. And then at some point, there are some members of the National Guard who are, we think, ordered to kind of turn and kneel and kind of watch some of the other students. And at this point, it's sort of a yada, yada, yada. We don't really know what exactly occurred, but at least one National Guardsman starts firing into the crowd, and then others do as well. The shooting lasted 13 seconds. It killed 4 students. There were 8 of the shooters who were charged with depriving the students with their civil rights, but they were acquitted very quickly. It is noteworthy that the judge in that trial did say, quote, "It is vital that state and National Guard officials not regard this decision as authorizing or approving the use of force against demonstrators. Whatever the occasion or the issue involved, such use of force is and was deplorable."